image like no other, inspiring decades of research and debate. The Shroud of Turin, that's a piece of history, and it has...
What if I told you that hidden inside a piece of ancient cloth lies proof of the most impossible event in human history? What if the answer to humanity's greatest question has been staring us in the face for over 700 years? Deep in the laboratories of Turin, Italy, something happened that changed everything. Scientists weren't looking for miracles that day. They were just doing their job, examining fibers under powerful microscopes. But then they saw something that made their hands shake. Letters, ancient letters embedded in the fabric itself. Not written, not painted, but somehow burned into the very soul of the cloth. And these letters spelled out a name that sent chills down their spines. For centuries, people have argued about this 14-foot piece of linen. Some say it's the most sacred relic in existence. Others dismiss it as nothing more than medieval trickery. But what these scientists found that day wasn't something any forger could have created. Because hidden in those fibers was knowledge that wouldn't be discovered for another 600 years. The cloth they were examining is called the Shroud of Turin, and it bears the faint image of a crucified man. But this isn't just any image. When you look at it with the naked eye, you see almost nothing, just some faint stains and shadows. But when scientists used advanced technology to peer deeper, they discovered something that defied every law of physics they knew. The image wasn't painted, it wasn't drawn, it wasn't created by any method known to science. It existed only on the surface of the fibers, thinner than a spider's web, as if it had been burned there by an explosion of pure light. But here's where it gets really strange. When they used 3D imaging technology, they found that the image contained depth information, like a three-dimensional photograph. But photography wouldn't be invented for another 500 years after this cloth first appeared in recorded history. So how did a medieval forger create something that modern science still can't explain? The story officially begins in 1357 in a small French village called Léré. A knight named Geoffrey de Charny claimed he possessed the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. People traveled from across Europe to see it. But almost immediately, the local bishop accused him of fraud. He claimed it was nothing more than a painted fake designed to trick pilgrims out of their money. But if it was a fake, it was unlike any fake ever created. The cloth survived wars, fires, and centuries of skepticism. In 1532, it barely escaped destruction when flames tore through the chapel where it was stored. The fire left distinctive burn marks along the edges, but somehow the image itself remained untouched, as if it was protected by something beyond human understanding.
Eventually, the shroud found its way to Turin, where it remains today. And that's where the real mystery began to unfold. When scientists examined the image under magnification, they discovered something that made medieval forgery impossible. The man in the shroud had been tortured in ways that matched exactly with Roman crucifixion practices. But here's the thing. Nobody in medieval times knew how the Romans actually crucified people. Medieval artists always showed nails going through the hands, but the shroud shows wounds through the wrists. For centuries, people thought this proved it was fake, until archaeologists discovered actual crucifixion victims from Roman times. The nails went through the wrists, exactly as shown on the shroud, because nails through the hands wouldn't support the weight of a human body. But that's just the beginning. The blood on the cloth is real human blood, type AB. It flows in patterns that perfectly match gravity and the physics of a crucified body. There are wounds on the shoulders from carrying something heavy, scrapes on the knees from falling, a spear wound in the side that matches exactly the size of Roman lance heads. Every detail tells the same story. This man was crucified exactly as described in the gospel accounts of Jesus' death. But then scientists found something else, something that changed everything. Embedded in the fibers around the feet, knees, and face was dust. Not just any dust. This was a rare form of limestone called aragonite. And this particular type of aragonite exists in only one place on Earth, the hills around Jerusalem, specifically near the Damascus Gate, just a short walk from Golgotha, the place where Jesus was crucified. It's as if the shroud carries the fingerprint of that sacred ground. But the most incredible discovery was still to come. When researchers used advanced imaging to study the cloth more carefully, they noticed something that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Hidden in the fibers, so faint they were almost invisible, were letters, ancient letters in Latin and Greek. And one word stood out clearly: Nazarene. This wasn't painted on. It wasn't embroidered. These letters had somehow transferred from another piece of cloth, possibly a burial face covering that had been laid over the shroud. In first-century Jewish burial customs, it was common to place a separate cloth bearing the deceased's name over the face.
But here's what made this discovery so explosive. In medieval times, no Christian artist would ever refer to Jesus simply as the Nazarene, without adding titles like Lord or Christ. To do so would have been considered heresy. This simple identification points to a much earlier time, closer to the 1st century, when such plain designations were normal. The handwriting style matched ancient Middle Eastern scripts, not medieval European writing. It was as if the cloth itself was identifying the man it once covered. But the most mind-bending discovery was yet to come. When scientists analyzed the image more closely, they found something that shouldn't exist. The image showed tiny variations, almost like individual frames in a movie. The hands, chest, and feet appear to have moved slightly when the image was formed. But how can a dead body move? Unless it wasn't dead anymore. Some researchers believe these microscopic shifts captured the exact moment of resurrection, the instant when death released its grip and life returned. If true, the shroud wouldn't just be a burial cloth. It would be the only artifact in human history to record the moment death was defeated. The image formation itself defies explanation. It required no heat, used no paint, and affected only the topmost surface of the fibers. Some scientists theorize it was caused by an intense burst of radiation or light. Others believe it was created by some unknown natural process. But there's another possibility, one that explains everything and changes everything. What if the image was created by the resurrection itself? What if that moment, when divine power flooded back into a lifeless body, released an energy so powerful it burned an image into the cloth wrapped around it? The Gospels describe that morning in vivid detail. Women approaching the tomb in the pre-dawn darkness, the massive stone rolled away by unseen hands, an angel announcing the impossible. He is not here. He has risen. Mary Magdalene stood weeping outside the empty tomb, not understanding what had happened. She saw a figure she assumed was the gardener, but when he spoke her name, she recognized the voice of the man she had watched die 3 days earlier. That moment has echoed through 2,000 years of human history. It transformed a handful of terrified disciples into world-changing apostles. It gave hope to the hopeless and courage to the afraid.
And it might have left behind physical evidence, burned into a piece of ancient linen. The Shroud of Turin remains one of the most studied and most controversial artifacts in human history. Every test reveals new mysteries. Every analysis raises new questions. The cloth continues to guard its secrets, revealing them slowly, one fiber at a time. But all the evidence points in the same direction. The wounds match the biblical account perfectly. The dust connects it to Jerusalem. The image defies scientific explanation. The hidden letters identify its occupant. Everything suggests we're looking at authentic first-century evidence of the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. If that's true, then wrapped in that ancient cloth is proof
of the most important event in human history. Evidence that death is not the end, that there is something beyond this life, that hope is not just wishful thinking, but historical fact. The Shroud story isn't finished. Scientists continue to study it, searching for answers hidden in its weave. New technologies reveal new details. Each discovery brings us closer to the truth. But perhaps the most important truth is this: whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the Shroud of Turin challenges us to consider possibilities beyond our understanding. It reminds us that there are still mysteries in this world, still questions without easy answers. And maybe, just maybe, it offers a glimpse into the moment when everything changed. When a man who claimed to be the Son of God proved it by walking out of his own tomb, leaving behind only an empty burial cloth and an image that continues to baffle science 2,000 years later. The evidence is there, burned into every fiber. But there's something else, something that might be the most compelling proof of all. In 1978, a team of elite scientists from NASA, Los Alamos, and universities around the world descended on Turin for the most comprehensive study ever conducted on the Shroud. They brought millions of dollars worth of equipment and 5 days of unrestricted access. Their mission was simple: solve the mystery once and for all. What they found left them speechless. The team included some of the world's most respected skeptics, scientists who went to Turin expecting to debunk the Shroud and expose it as a medieval fake. But after 5 days of intensive testing, many of them left as believers. They discovered that the image was created by a process unknown to science. No paint, no dye, no chemical reaction could explain it. The coloration was so superficial it measured only a few microns deep, thinner than a human hair. Yet it created a perfect photographic negative that revealed incredible detail when processed through modern technology. But here's what really shook them. When they tried to recreate the image, using every method available to medieval forgers, they failed. Every single attempt. Whether they used paints, dyes, heated sculptures, or chemical reactions, nothing came close to matching the Shroud's unique properties. One scientist, Dr. John Jackson, spent decades trying to solve the puzzle. He created detailed computer models, conducted hundreds of experiments, and consulted with experts in every relevant field. His conclusion was startling. The only process that could create such an image would be an intense burst of radiation lasting less than a second. But radiation powerful enough to create such an image should have destroyed the cloth completely. Instead, it barely affected the surface fibers. It was as if the energy came from within the body itself, radiating outward with surgical precision.